Quick, name the first 24 amendments to the Constitution. There's the one. Yeah, me neither. Up until Donald Trump became president, the 25th Amendment wasn't something people talked all that much about because, well, it's been a long time since a president was so bad at the job that there was any real reason to even consider getting rid of him before his term ended. But with just days left in Trump's term and in the wake of supporters of the president storming and for a time overrunning the U.S. Capitol building, all with his not so subtle support, talk of the 25th Amendment is everywhere. 25th Amendment, 25th Amendment. So what is it? And what are the chances that it winds up getting used to throw Trump out of office before he is constitutionally forced to vacate the job come January 20th at noon? Well, the first thing to understand about the 25th Amendment is that its main purpose was not initially to create a procedure by which the vice president and the president's cabinet could get together and depose him. The goal was simply to ensure that the presidential line of succession was crystal clear. If the president died or was incapacitated, the power of the presidency would transfer to the vice president, which seems obvious, right? But when President Dwight Eisenhower had a major heart attack in 1955, there was no legal way to determine how and if he would hand off power and to whom. He came to an understanding with his senior advisors and later Vice President Richard Nixon that he would hand it off to Nixon. Then after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson took the office, but without any formal succession of power plan in place. And that tragedy proved a significant enough shock to the system that in 1967, the 25th Amendment was ratified. And while it was primarily focused on codifying that the VP takes over if the president dies, there was also this in Section 4 of the amendment. Quote, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president, end quote. Oh, the Constitution, what a quick read. I'm gonna go read some of it later. Anyway, the point, on brand, is this. The 25th Amendment gave the vice president, as long as a majority of the cabinet was with him or her, a sort of kill switch on the presidency. Now, the president can fight it. He can say the VP is wrong and he's totally in control. But if the vice president and a majority of the cabinet affirm their initial judgment that he needs to be removed, the matter goes before Congress, where if 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate vote to remove the president, well then, he gone. But that's never happened before. The first 3 sections of the 25th Amendment have been used. It's how Gerald Ford took office in 1974 following Nixon's resignation amid the Watergate crisis, and how Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush transferred power to their vice presidents during medical procedures that required them to be something less than fully conscious. Section 4, however, has never been invoked. In fact, before Trump, it's never really been talked about in any serious way. Sure, partisans opposed to the various presidents have shouted about the 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment! But no one in a position of power ever actually considered using it, at least as far as we know. Indiana Democratic Senator Birch Bayh, who helped author the 25th Amendment's language, made clear that he viewed Section 4 as an absolute last resort to be used only, quote, if the president was as nutty as a fruitcake. Mental illness, pure and simple, is the only time this provision would be used, end quote. Which brings me to the right now and Donald Trump and the legitimate talk within his administration about invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him. As CNN's Jim Acosta and Pamela Brown reported in early January, quote, Vice President Mike Pence has not ruled out an effort to invoke the 25th Amendment and wants to preserve the option in case President Donald Trump becomes more unstable, a source close to the vice president says. The report went on to add this, quote, the source said there is some concern inside Pence's team that there are risks to invoking the 25th Amendment or even to an impeachment process, as Trump could take some sort of rash action putting the nation at risk, end quote. That's comforting. Now, there's a big difference between Pence and his top aides keeping the 25th Amendment out there as a possibility and actually moving to invoke it against Trump. And the chances of securing a majority of the cabinet to back such a move have actually declined in the days since the Capitol Hill riot. The resignations following that riot of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos and Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao take two potential cabinet votes in favor of using the 25th Amendment against Trump, at least in theory, right off the table. Now, while CNN has reported that according to 3 sources, 2 cabinet secretaries have called their cabinet colleagues to gauge the possibility of forcing Trump to hold a cabinet meeting so that they can voice their concerns directly to him, it's unclear, at least to me, A, if that will actually happen, or B, if that actually leads to supporting the 25th Amendment removal process. The very fact that there's a serious discussion around the 25th Amendment, particularly this close to the end of Donald Trump's term, speaks to what an absolute disaster this presidency has turned into. Is it enough to force Pence's hand and push for removal? I'm skeptical that he will go that far unless Trump does something even more to prove he is an active danger while still in office, which, because he is Trump, remains an actual possibility. And that is the point. We make new Point episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Be sure to check them all out.